programme is brought to you by UCL, London's global university.
So, that's all I'd like to say. It takes us into our panel discussion. The purpose of today was not just to present the institution, but was to try and engage in opinion formers, which you all are, on how this project and other legacy projects should develop in the coming weeks and months. So I'd like you all to get very much involved in this. There's going to be a point in which you're going to be able to ask your own questions, and the panelists will lead in the discussion, but again I'd like you all to be a part of it. I've fleshed out a few questions that I think we could start by asking, so while you're all thinking of what you might want to ask, can we head to the panel on these? Overall, first off, how much good, or bad, I hope it's a good, do we think that the Games, and then we'll come back and think about the movement, but just the Games, 2012, what good do you think these Games are going to do? Richard.
Thanks for turning to me. Thank you for your challenging presentation, Peter. I think that there have obviously always been a lot of doubters about the Games, and well, you know, Paris, we should have let Paris have it because of the cost, because of all the disruption, because of many of the things you talk about. And I suppose what we have to do within LOCOG, within anyone else who's supporting the Games, is mitigate those things you were talking about from the carbon footprint, which I must admit, you know, I've never seen an organisation so focused on green issues, on doing things properly from that point of view. There really is a lot of effort going into that, and some novel ideas as well. So we can do an awful lot to mitigate some of the things that you were concerned about. I totally accept that no Olympics in the past has ever managed to directly link more people exercising to the Olympic Games. In fact, temporarily during the Olympics, of course, fewer people exercise because they're all watching television or at events. But it is a challenge to get that inspiration effect going across to more people exercising. And the other thing, as you say, exercise is dangerous. That's why we're all here. Sport is dangerous anyway, and really the equation only shifts once you're over 40 or so, doesn't it? So we have to get people into that exercise habit and then keep them exercising over 40 when the benefits already kick in, and your fat man will make a difference to you.
Stuart.
From a Paralympic point of view, it's hugely important. If you look at spinal injured people in the general population, the death rate from heart disease is vast. And we're only just beginning to understand that. If we can get people exercising, there is a link, and I think that link will become clearer over the years. Sometimes elite sports players are so elite and so far away from the ability to connect with that people don't exercise because they think, you know, I'll never be them and I won't do it. Or you hear that they've had to train for 8 years and get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's Richard. But I think that from the Paralympic point of view, people see people like them. You know, oh, he's in a wheelchair as well. He's lost his leg. He's lost his arm. And begin to make the connection. I can do that. And I think from that point of view, to have a legacy of disabled people being able to see athletes competing with a disability, I think is a massive gain.
Thanks for very challenging questions. I would like to say a few things that are not connected to exercise first, and it's about the construction, the dust and the disruption. We just visited the Olympic Village last week on Friday, and I have to say it's the cleanest site I've ever seen. It's just fascinating what they're doing, and they're really trying not to disrupt the environment as much as they possibly can. So absolutely big benefit. Great Britain has shown that it's possible to do these things with minimal disruption, so great credit to LOCOG. The other one is, the other good, I think, is the facilities. Great Britain is not rich in sporting facilities for people to exercise more, I have to say. And the Olympic Games have triggered all sorts of things around the country. I was in Aberdeen before coming to London at Aberdeen University, and we didn't have any sporting facility there. And as of sudden, a big facility has been built. So new facilities are being built, which will increase the ability for people to exercise. So there's a lot of good there. But I think the biggest good that the Olympics can do is inspire people, not only to exercise, but inspire people to do other things. By looking at the success of our athletes and looking at the way the World Cup is going, hopefully inspire people to take on other sports where they can be more successful than the footballers.
I think for me, just picking up on the point Richard made, and if you look at evidence across other Olympic host nations, there's actually very little indication that hosting the Games does improve physical activity levels. So I think we have to be absolutely certain, we in the government, that hosting the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games is combined with some very solid public health initiatives where we are increasing opportunities, increasing time on school curriculum for kids, for example, because without those, people might go out and buy, perhaps not a bob skeleton, but a javelin or whatever else, and do some more sport for just a few weeks. So I think it's absolutely crucial that we get those links right. I think in terms of where there really can be some very profound legacy, it is in areas such as the establishment, development of the Faculty of Sport and Exercise Medicine, and through things like Science and Medicine and the BOA and the English Institute of Sport. The amount of investment that we've had in these areas over the last 5 years, decade, but particularly since we won the London Games, has created an absolute stepwise change in our knowledge and understanding of sport medicine and sport science. And I think that is something that absolutely we take beyond 2012 to benefit this community, but also the public at large.
Can I throw that open to the audience? The point was, we've got 100 weeks to get 2 million people exercising. Are we really going to be able to do that? And if so, how are we proposing to do that? And he directed that at Ken.
I think you said to the whole panel, are we going to do it? I mean, I know some of your thoughts on it, Hugh, and I think there needs to be some very, very bold steps to make this happen. We know a quarter of us, UK population, are obese, approximately 40% are overweight, and even fewer of us meet government guidelines for physical activity, myself included, by a very long way. And unless we have a fundamental change in the way we conduct our lives, it's very difficult to see that changing. Extensive surveys done internationally as well across the UK, the biggest barrier to people taking physical activity or exercise is time, or at least people say it's time. So it clearly has to be built into someone's normal day. If people don't have time to go to the gym after work, well, it has to be a part of work, or it has to be a part of commuting. I'll probably avoid commenting too much on climate change because I know very little about it, but there's clearly a benefit that could be had there if we can give up trains, cars, and actually start moving over onto walking or cycling.
I think that there's something which you can do which is absolutely free. They use it extensively in Bristol and Bath. And that's to make public transport so awful that you have to walk everywhere.
That's done here as well.
See, on a serious note, there is a specialty I'd never heard of until we got to the bid, which was social architecture, which is where they design your tube station to be on the other side of the park from the car park, and the only path goes up the hill in order to get there. It's a fascinating specialty that has got to, certainly is evident within the Olympic Village. Eleanor Tillett. Eleanor is one of the new sport and exercise medicine doctors. Eleanor, you had a point.
Thank you to Peter and the panel. I wondered if there'd been any ideas around linking the public health initiatives actually with the TV coverage. We hoped in previous games that by watching the games that would be enough to inspire people, and that really hasn't been the case. public health messages or education being delivered during ad breaks, a 5-minute aerobic programme at the beginning and end of each broadcast. I mean, are there any ideas around that? Picking up on Hugh's point, what are the concrete plans?
Yep.
Well, I think it's some good ideas. They're being talked about, but there's no definite plans. I will never forget the Lillehammer Games, where they got everyone doing aerobics while they were waiting for the events to start, but basically because it was minus 25 degrees C, so you had to do that. We hopefully won't have that problem, but I think it is a huge opportunity, and there are ideas about, because we will have everyone's mobile telephone numbers, their internet addresses when they've got tickets, so there's a lot of opportunity for basic communication about where to access help, but also about health protection and positive health messages, yes.
Hello, I'm Tara Donnelly and I work at UCLH. And I'm just interested in this point about getting Londoners exercising and what works and what doesn't and what the evidence is elsewhere. As part of my commute to work, I walk through Summertown, which is probably the most deprived ward in Camden. And I've been watching with interest in this little area of green space, an outdoor gym is being constructed. And I've been going past thinking, nobody will ever use that. And in fact, it's really busy. Lots of people are using this gym in the morning and on my return from work, and I don't know what they do while I'm at work, but it's being very intensively used to my complete surprise. And I just wonder whether there's any evidence of this happening in other parts of the country or elsewhere, that it can be used as a focus, as you say, in a convenient place with no cash barrier to access, whether there's any evidence of this working elsewhere.
There is no evidence, or at least I'm not aware, but for sure, in order to increase participation in physical activity, we need to increase the education we give to people as well as the opportunities. And this is a good example of creating opportunities for people to exercise. I am convinced that if there is more possibility for people to exercise for free, they will eventually do it. And this is a good initiative to put exercise tools in the park. I remember in China, in every single park we've gone through in Beijing, there were consistently people exercising or using all sorts of exercise devices that were installed before the games. So definitely this is an initiative that should continue.
I just wonder how much more people will exercise purely if that degree of money was spent on providing municipal sports facilities. Certainly cost me a £5 to go for a swim or go to the gym. And if people are strapped for cash, like me, it's going to be much more difficult. It's a disincentive.
Now, one of the questions I have is leading on from Marco's point about the venues and sort of accessibility to the venues. I had the luxury of growing up in Canada, where exercise effectively was free. I could go to a tennis court as a kid, play for free. I could go ice skating for free. And I think it's really important that a lot of these venues and activities are accessible by people who can't afford them. And I know that obviously we have a lot of influence in this room, and the evidence from the panel and the strengths that they can provide to back up this evidence. I mean, who are we, sort of what doors are we knocking on in the government to say, can we get some of these venues and can we get them at a cheaper price for people to access them?
I might start. Well, I think it's very topical and hugely challenging, because with the new government, they're very much, as I understand it, against top-down and for local initiative, things being run locally. So the first casualty of that, as I understand it, is the free swimming. So some of what we thought were legacies in the bag for 2012 are actually being taken away. I think we can use the pressure of this sort of group to inform both local and national government that if we're going to use the Olympics to their full effect, that there's got to be a rethink of direction.
I'm James Mountford from UCL Partners, which is a collaboration between the university and several hospitals, including UCLH. And my question is about the ability of the Olympics and sports medicine and the sorts of things we're talking about to make the National Health Service think more about the middle word. The National Health Service is more like a sickness service at the moment. It needs to save a lot of money. what's the potential, what are the lessons that we can draw out from what you guys are doing to make our health service promote more well-being?
My name's Bruce Payton. I'm a clinical specialist physiotherapist over at UCLH. As part of our physio department, we've set up some gym pathways, both for young sporting people, but also for older people with osteoarthritis or coming toward joint replacement. And they've actually been very effective in terms of cost effectiveness, effectiveness as more of a kind of a permanent solution to the person's problem. The difficulty we have is adherence. We can keep the people for a certain amount of time, but ultimately what you'd like is that the people continue to exercise after you've finished. Hopefully we're giving them the tools to exercise as far as a strategy or structure to work in. It's sort of demystifying a gym environment for sort of normal people who would perhaps never access a gym. But the difficulty we have, I guess, is maintenance and how to carry that on. And the funding for that, ultimately, you'd like all of our people to continue exercise after and to have a service for them which is free that they could access. But we've had something like 200 or 300 people go through our classes in the last 3 years, and there's not a lot of, it's difficult to provide that kind of maintenance from a cost point of view.
That's really good. We've got two more people who are going to give us a really valuable contribution, I hope. Introduce yourself and fire away.
Hi, Zafar Iqbal, Doctor at Tottenham and Sports Injury Clinic Newham. Just going back to the point the lady made about the gym in the park, they did try that in Walthamstow, but unfortunately after 2 weeks the equipment got nicked. Just my point about, we know that we've won the bid obviously 3 years ago, and since then this legacy about making people exercise more keeps coming back up. But over the last 3 years, working in the East End and working in quite a few of the hospitals around there, I still find it quite difficult to find out who's actually leading on this. And I think part of the problem is there's so many different groups that are saying that yes, we'll take the lead on actually promoting physical activity. But I think it's really got to come from one main body who's actually got to take lead if we can actually try and get people to increase exercise. And I don't know what the panel thought about that.
If you look at the American College of Sports Medicine exercise is health message, reinforcing that every time somebody comes into a general practice surgery is absolutely vital. I've got to say, the American College of Sports Medicine, I went to the conference sponsored by Coca-Cola and Mars. That they are sort of saying, do you realise that as Americans we eat too much and we don't take enough exercise? And I actually think that the UK have arrived in terms of our message is starting to get across slightly better than across the pond.
I think what has changed since 2005, I don't know whether it's coincidental, I hope that Steve Colgrave might shed some light on that from the Department of Health. What has changed is that message of obesity from the Department of Health has changed into one of lifestyle. It's now, it shows you little cartoons of people exercising and eating well. So the public health message has started to change. Steve?
Yes, I'm an advisor to the Department of Health. I think on the wellness point, and I'll talk a little bit more about exercise medicine in a moment, I think there is a lot of work going on in terms of the new white paper for public health, and I think the Secretary of State is talking about the importance of the Department of Health really morphing very much into a Department of Public Health. I think, and I'm an advisor, I'm not talking to the Department of Health. I think the issue is, I think a lot of people are trying to address these problems. I think the issue is going to be money. Because everything I've seen is that everybody is talking the right sort of language, and people, I think, are addressing the issues of a sedentary nation and lack of exercise and activity, rather than just trying to go for headline figures like we're going to switch around childhood obesity, which is not necessarily the way to do it. I think all that, and a lot of work is going to be done on that. I think down at the local level, good local government, good local councils will do a lot to this, but there will be some that don't take it as a top priority. So I think, probably back to Richard's point, I think probably that things are in a much better place in terms of people understanding what to do. My concern is really where the money's going to come from. And I think one of the issues which we could do better at is engaging private partners. I'm not talking about Mars and Coke. I'm talking about people who perhaps, I mean, we had a meeting the other morning, people who perhaps operate 130 leisure centres around the country. There's one organisation that does that. And perhaps they could be incentivised to do more about providing access over the Olympics. The bit I did want to quickly talk about was just to add a context to today. I think this is a really, really exciting initiative that's going on here, but also there was a big commitment for a national centre, and I think the other thing to make people aware of is that this is just part of a movement in the country with at least 2 or 3 other centres around the country who have all agreed to work together to try and scope out a networked national centre for sport and exercise medicine. And what's important in that is back to the NHS point, because I think where we all know the big challenges, and the bit I'm working on, is to try and actually get things back into the NHS. As you said, those first sports doctors that got together were not a part of the NHS. So our really big challenge, we just put a business case together now, which actually shows to the new administration that there are huge cost savings, productivity savings, as well as real advantages in care in the sports exercise medicine as a service. And as you all know, we've hardly scratched the surface of using exercise as a treatment, as a medicine in its own right. And I think what's really exciting, and where hopefully we'll all be talking to you, is actually sitting down with commissioners and talking about getting that service into place. That business case, we hoped in the next couple of weeks to have that ready to circulate to everyone so you can see that. And also watch this space in terms of this very important initiative today becoming part of a national initiative.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Steve. When I sent a list of these questions off to some of the panel members, really focusing on the Olympics, Richard sent it back saying, yeah, that's great, but how about this one that I've put here as question 4? I.e., it's okay us answering the questions, but what about you answering the question? As I've managed to negotiate myself up here as the compere, I don't have to, so I'm going to ask Farah, my co-director, to answer that. Just how do we think this institute is going to change these issues? How's it going to be a force for achieving what we've said there, really, that we're going to make the positive outcome from the Games, this nation, healthier and exercising?
The reason for doing this and the reason for linking in nationally and internationally is if you bring the best that have been geared up for looking after the elite together and co-locate them, if you put them in a facility where they work together, then that will bring together the expertise in one place where you can deliver the education, deliver the training and deliver the research, and hence you will multiply that expertise. And that will then deliver it on several fronts, but in terms of the sports side of the equation, the injury level, you optimise what you do to the elite, and that immediately translates to the weekend warrior, the private and the NHS person involved in sport. So you've got to win on the negative side of the equation, but also by bringing together all these sports and exercise physicians and allied workers, being biological, non-biological scientists, all in the same place. What you've got is then the vehicle through which you develop exercise, not just sport, and you develop that wellness. And it was that last question that you asked. There are many people in this room who are better versed in exercise medicine and how to deliver it than I am. But what I truly believe is that if you have a core of people co-located whose passion is to deliver sport and exercise medicine, that is the way. By creating a power base, then you will have the capacity to deliver exercise medicine and not just sports injury care. And that's part of what we're trying to do here within the university on the research front, but also with collaborators. You know, Derek Yellen's here, Stan Newman's here, John Deanford will hopefully be here. Lots of other very important people who've been involved in prevention and wellness. Bring all that together and then ultimately translate to primary care. So I'm not sure I've answered your question fully, but I think by bringing the right people together, that's a long way to get there.
I think I'd echo Stephen's point about exercise being our most underused therapeutic tool, and that's really important, and that message has to get across. I'd also say, I'm not sure I've got evidence for this, but it's my experience that as well as time, the other big excuse people have is injuries. That's why they stop exercising, so that's why it's so vital we have sport and exercise medicine. And then on the institute it is, as you were saying, Farah, is about the critical mass, and I think it's getting that expertise together. And I'd also push for the importance of this sort of institute being housed in a secondary tertiary care centre with a university, because of all the contacts and the expertise that we brought to bear. Because sport and exercise medicine is about a type of a practice of medicine. It's the individuals you're talking about. It's not a single, it's not just genetics, Hugh. It's an awful lot more, isn't it? So we have to have a broad number of experts. Thank you.
I think
I'm Stephen Chu, one of the sport medicine registrars. As regards the Olympics, I think Richard alluded to this, but I think there's a demonstration and a festival effect of the Olympics. And actually, I think the difference with London 2012 is that they very much focused on the legacy, and that's shown in a BMJ review article that came out quite recently from Christchurch University. Second thing is really a question to yourself, Mr. Hamlin, is Let's Get Moving was released last year as the physical activity care pathway for the NHS. And according to a paper that's come out recently in the BRJSM, only 660 out of 9,556,000 consults on a GP database have been coded to the GP pack and Let's Get Moving, showing that the current NHS policy is potentially not working. How can the Institute do practical measures to promote exercise? It's really much what we've been discussing here.
Okay, that's a really good point. I'd like to use it to round up on by answering it, and we will then go into coffee. My view is that when you put organisations like this together, you do create a hub. I alluded to the fact that UCL is ranked 5th in the world in terms of its research. If it can't work out how you can do that, if it can't then generate models whereby you can measure that you've effectively converted people to exercise in a sustainable way, then I don't think there's an institution that can. So I think we have put together the best brains. It's a very clear challenge, and it's one that I hope the Institute will answer in its work. Stephen has made the point that we're not working alone. The Department of Health, having seen that single institute in East London disappear, is putting together this package of like-minded organisations that are charged with working together across the nation to deliver all of these goals. And I think that that's a movement and a grouping that will allow us to deliver things on a national level. And also the Department of Health has partners, she alluded to, who have some very broad links into the community outside of the health world. And that's really where you've got to get to. You've got to get to schools, you've got to get to education, you've got to get to the exercising population. And they will allow us to do that. So I think you can't do it alone. You do have to have strong individual members of the team. I think we've got the strongest grouping you could possibly hope for. And there is a team being put together, and I think that will deliver.
To find out more about UCL, please visit us at itunes.ucl.ac.uk.